Hey Alice, welcome back to the Mad Tea Party. You have come at a momentous occasion, a very important date, you might say. I have Drone Collective to my left here. That would be Adam and Rumi. You remember Rumi from the Everything is Fine episode with Tanatswa. So, returning guest and new guest. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. I got a sneak peek at Drone Collective's new album. What was the title of that?
Drone Collective.
Oh, self-titled. Perfect. That's why I couldn't remember because it's the name. Okay, gotcha. Yes, Drone Collective, self-titled EP by Drone Collective, is a very nice, solid piece of music, and you guys should be very proud of yourselves.
Thank you.
Well, the work was all in.
Well, you should be very proud of yourself.
Thank
It
you.
is a very just nice piece of music that runs congruent with itself. Um, I really enjoyed it. I listened to it like 2.5 times today.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Um, yeah, man. So have you always been interested in that kind of music?
It was an evolution. I've always wanted to facilitate a spiritual experience within the listener. I always wanted to help people and do so in unconventional ways. I was always interested in long music, songs above 10 minutes long, something that was cinematic, something engaging and vivid, something that could convey a tapestry of emotional storytelling. And that's the sort of thing that really captured me from a very young age, but I lacked the resources to do it until very recently.
It was very moody and made me feel things because it like I don't know. It's almost like it's sunny and then you see clouds and then that's like it's about to get dark and then it rains. And it's like it takes I don't know, it just took me through like a wave of emotions, you know? Like
Yeah.
something I learned about storytelling is if you really want to like impact with something sad, you have to like show the happy moments. Because if you
Yeah.
come out the gate swinging with just sad, depressing, you have not set a precedent for anyone to like care about those characters or like be prepared for like there. You haven't built anything up to tear down. You know.
100%.
Yeah. So it's a musical journey. You can check out Drum Collective on December 6th. Is when actually it's out right now. It's out right now as this episode is out. And you can also catch them live at Adam's house. DM him for address.
Yes, and we'll be wearing these very silly Drone Depot shirts, which,
Oh
by the
yeah.
way, are available for purchase exclusively at our live events. We'll be doing a little free show at my house, and I hope to have some as well in the future. And we will be doing 1 hour of uninterrupted drone music. Drone music. It's tongue in cheek, but
It's very tongue in cheek.
there's drone elements. I like to think of the drone collective is like Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson, calling that a fight. It's like there were fighting elements, but it wasn't really a fight, and that's kind of how I think of drone collective. There's drone elements, but
I mean, technically it drones.
it does. I calculated it. 7 out of the 40 minutes approximately is drone. So about 20% of the music is drone, but usually
15% concentrated power of will
Exactly.
and 100%.
Just like the Fort Minor hit single.
Yes. Yeah.
that was actually my exclusive inspiration for the album.
That one song
Yeah,
off of that obscure
yeah.
Fort Minor
We couldn't we
record.
couldn't find a rapper though.
Did
So
anybody check if that added up to 100%?
I think it's like he says like he says all of that stuff and then he says 50% pain and 100% reason to remember the name.
Well, you know what? Venn diagrams, maybe it's like
Can we get a chart?
Could be overlapping.
Let's go down to the chart.
Yes.
We
We need like a blackboard here.
You see,
Just do mathematics lectures.
Alice, help us out. Please.
Yeah, Alice, help! I don't know how to do math.
Well, I mean, if you don't want to do math, you may have a challenging time with the Drone Collective album because there is quite a lot of odd times and whatnot.
Apparently, Mike Shinoda doesn't know how to do math either, so we're not alone. Yeah. So, what kind of music was there in the house when you were growing up?
Well, that's a good question. My parents were
Thank
a
you.
very passive, like, music's a kind of nice thing to put on. My dad will always put on like the 60s and the 70s, but I don't know if, to what extent there was like a real emotional connection or relationship. I mean, he liked music, and my mom likes 80s music, but they nurtured music within me at a very young age. But there wasn't, I really didn't get a sense of zeal and passion for it in the same way I cultivated within myself. I did find out that my grandmother on my dad's side, she actually does, she loves early classical music, which I've been getting into as well. And she plays recorder. I didn't really get to see that very much growing up, but honestly, the whole music thing has been an intuitive thing that I cultivated within myself, as I said, from a very young age. Apparently, when I was around 1 or 2 years old, my parents noticed that I was just air drumming and very rhythmically inclined. And luckily, even though they may not have been particularly musically inclined themselves, they helped me out. And when I was 8 years old, they got me a drum set. Admittedly, it's always been a challenge for me to connect with others musically, and there were a lot of uphill battles, but they got me drum lessons. They nurtured me to the best of my ability. When I took an interest in guitar, they bought a guitar for me. And I'm very fortunate to have had a loving family see something that was a gift within me and nurture it.
Right on. So they're kind of like passive music listeners, but that was still your introduction to it. And then you developed your own love of music.
Yeah, like I used to when I was getting into my early, very, very early influences were like long, winding progressive rock, like Porcupine Tree, or progressive death metal, like Opeth. And I used to put on like a 15-minute song of theirs and just like, wow, this is really telling such a story. And then my dad would be like, oh, that's nice. Not really think anything of it, right?
I love a good 12-minute song like the opening track y'all have.
Yes.
It's like I was saying earlier, like the art of the album is a dying art. Like it's all about singles because it's all about profit,
Right.
you know?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I am very much, and I think you are as well in your own music. I am really not in it for the marketing. I'm really not in it for the 3 minutes. I actually worked with someone a while ago who told me that no one's going to listen if it's past 3 minutes. And if that's true, then I don't care if anyone
You're an
listens.
artist.
I am here to facilitate a spiritual experience within the listener and help people. And for some people, to do so in a condensed way is the way that works for them. And it's clearly helping a lot of people. But for me, I want a long piece. In fact, my ultimate goal is to create things even longer than a Drone Collective album, something on that scale that could even be hours long, very long pieces that just are moving, that tell a story. You look at Gustav Mahler, his stuff is like an hour, hour and a half long, and it really tells a story.
I'm not a musician, but I write poetry and I'm working on a novel, so I do understand storytelling. And it's even not like as a creative, but as like a consumer, I really love stories. Really big into fantasy, so I respect good storytelling, and that's particularly hard to do when there's no words.
Yes.
Right? Like visual storytelling is a thing, but if you strip away visuals too, and it's just sound,
Yeah.
that's in a lot of ways kind of a more efficient language than words.
Well, if you'll allow me to play devil's advocate, I actually personally think the other way around. I have never liked vocals. It's just a personal thing. I don't judge other people who listen to music with vocals. Obviously, if there's some content in the lyrics that resonates with people, more power to you. But for me, I actually find lyrics to be quite restrictive. I have had plenty of times where I've really connected to the rhythm, to the melody, and there's something very moving in the interplay of the guitars or the particular configuration of the drum riff. Something in the music itself moved me, but then the subject matter might be completely irrelevant to my life, and
Just
I'm
kind of
thrown
gets in the
out.
way, yeah.
Exactly. And so I've always gravitated towards the expansiveness and openness of
When
instrumental
I
music.
when I was listening to your album, like, oh shit, this is instrumental. There's no
Yeah.
vocals here. Like that's really refreshing.
It's a deliberate choice. It's not like oh, we couldn't find a vocal. It's like, nope, I want it instrumental.
You don't really do vocals in your stuff either, do you? Or it's like
It's-
minimalist.
It's pretty sparse.
Yeah.
Vocals are pretty sparse in my stuff. I'm singing more often than usual, but that's just for technical reasons because I'm not
Yeah.
very good with using my voice.
And you kind of use it as an instrument, not as
Yes.
like a vehicle for like language.
Exactly. Like vocals in my stuff, it's pretty behind in the mix. It's not in the forefront like in traditional rock music. You have
Gotcha.
vocals in the forefront. Mine's more like in the background or at least in line with the instrumentation.
Yeah. I appreciate those decisions. It works.
Right on.
Yeah. So yeah, it's easy. There's difficulty with not having words and storytelling, and then there's also makes it easier. I can see how those would both. There's like a trade-off because like with just having music, it's easier to convey an emotion, but it's a little bit vaguer.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. I'm not telling you what the song's about. So two different people can listen to the same exact song that's instrumental. Well, any song, but particularly with instrumental music, and they may have a completely different interpretation of it.
I'll have to listen to it again and like really pay attention to the song titles.
Yeah, there are some cues for those who are listening. You may have noticed on some of the promotional content I talk about this sort of thing, that there are some vague ideas behind some of the music. For example, The Journey is this sort of narrative about spiritual change, and there are some very, I guess, vague sort of clues about movement and direction and guidance and change and evolution over time. For example, the field recordings I took of highway underpasses or parking lots, and then the track Mirkwood, right? Well, you know, like fantasy, it's straight from The Hobbit, and
right on.
The idea is just this lush, gorgeous set of nature, like it's just whatever it is, just trees or ponds or whatever, something that just makes someone feel connected to the earth, and how that relationship might change over time depending on the natural elements. But I'm kind of making it up as I go along because I don't really think about these things consciously as I make the music.
Sure.
Because other people might listen and come up with their own understanding of it.
Yeah. So I'm gonna ask you about writing process, but specifically what I want to get at is what's the inception of a song for you?
Well,
where does it start?
If I want to be a little tongue-in-cheek about the answer, for me, it's higher power, some sort of divine inspiration of some sort, whether it's consciously or unconsciously.
I like that answer.
But to be more practical about it, it's just for these tracks in particular. Well, the fourth track, Flower Moon, I did not compose, but the first three I did. And for those and my other stuff I've worked on, I just diddle around with the guitar, and then I come up with a riff, and then maybe another riff, and then I connect them together, and they're very, very complicated. And I think about every note extremely deliberately. No note is just improvised except for some of the drone sections. There's a calculated storytelling behind each note. If you listen to music, you'll notice that I don't play the same thing twice, even in repetitive hypnotic drone sections. There is something that's unique about every presentation at any given moment. And I think about all of that in advance for the purpose of facilitating some sort of experience that evolves over time. And honestly, there may not be a better answer than it sounds right to me.
Sure.
And it sounds like I'm in accordance with divine will as I conceive it.
Amen to that. I love that. So okay, it's kind of a mixed bag. Depends on the song, how it was developed, I guess. Like some is more intentional noodling until you find something, and then some it's like, if I'm understanding right, just hits you out of nowhere, and then you develop it from there.
It's a little bit of both. I mean, it all starts with some sort of riff, and then like, how can I continue it? Or if I made like, for example, The Journey, there are some riffs in there that I came up with like maybe 2-3 years ago, and then later on I revisited and I thought, how can I add to it? And particularly with Morning Dove and Mirkwood, those tracks are in alternative tunings, so that could be an inspiration in and of itself. The sounds of the strings together in the unconventional context. For example, I created my own tuning for Mirkwood, and when you do that sort of thing, it creates this entirely unique sonic palette, and then the music can tend to just arrive organically from that place. And it can be very easy to write something. Mirkwood was a very intuitive thing. I wrote it from beginning to end very seamlessly.
What is a non-musical influence to your music?
Oh God. Can you answer that one first, actually?
Oh,
I
yeah.
gotta think about that.
Sure. I guess, well, the boring answer is your life experiences.
Oh, sure.
Yeah,
That's a good answer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, that was the easy answer. This is life experiences.
Yeah.
But for me, I would say, well, life experiences. It's funny I say that because they don't really influence my music or the way I write. I would say maybe history for me, like world history is a big
like
influence.
other people's life experience.
Other people's life experiences.
What's a historical figure that really is influential to you?
Me, Eugene Debs. He's a socialist.
Ran for president in 1912 and lost, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I know that guy.
He got jailed for giving a dissenting speech towards the U.S. government.
Really?
Yeah, in Canton, Ohio. That's actually the album cover of my first album, Hanna-Barbera.
Wow.
Never made.
Really?
Him giving that speech.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Interesting. So he was just in prison for, wow, that's super un-American. Wish I could say I'm surprised, but that seems to be a theme.
I've got my answer, but you have anything? Okay.
No, it's history.
So for me, we're talking about typical subjects taught in a classroom. For me, I would say mathematics. I actually am a math major, statistics major, predictive analytics, computer science sort of realm. And the rigidity of it, I really grew to detest over time. The fact that there had to be a right answer, the concrete nature of it. Like I studied this stuff like in depth, and it really started to sort of get to me because a lot of people find creativity in it, but I didn't. But what it did do is that it informed my different hemispheres of my brain, because I've got the one side of my brain that's the analytical side and the other side that's the creative side, and they both inform each other.
Yeah.
So just as I can introduce creativity in the technicality, I can introduce technicality and creative in the creativity, and I don't do the technicality for the sake of the technicality. So you'll hear on Mooring Dove and The Journey in particular, extremely complicated time signature shifts, such that every bar or every two bars actually changes time signature. It's not even an odd time signature consistently. They'll change time signatures like over and over. And without that sort of rigorous study of technicality and meter and whatnot that I got from my background as a drummer and learning mathematics, I couldn't have done it. But again, I'm not doing it just for the sake of showing off. I'm doing it for the sake of, I want to facilitate an experience. And I think that these technicalities can really facilitate something interesting and unique and distinctive within the listener. There's a reason why I chose this meter at this moment.
Yeah.
I was also a math major, so when I joined, I kind of picked up the music a bit easier than I guess the average person who was not a math major would have.
It's true. He got it very quickly.
And the thing is, I don't know any music theory aside from time signatures. I don't know notes. Like if I heard a note, I wouldn't be able to name like, well, that's an A or something like that. And I can't read music, so I'm musically illiterate aside from time.
Yeah. See, that's the one thing that you got to know for Drone Collective.
Sure.
Like you really cannot. There are sections of improvisation, and they're calculated at particular moments, but it's not. You can't improvise to a Drone Collective experience. It's very methodical, very well planned out, and it's probably one of the reasons why I struggle to find new bandmates. If you're interested, hit me up. But you have a lot of homework ahead of you. The chord charts are quite extensive.
And I couldn't even read them. So,
so I love what you said about the two hemispheres informing each other.
It's actually my when I apply for jobs, that's also what I used. I said I'm a right and left brain thinker, and that got me my new job. So I guess that worked.
There's got to be a healthy balance for sure. I agree with you. There's like a technical aspect that is very important, and then there is the creative aspect, which is equally important. And you gotta have both.
Absolutely.
For sure. I mean, I'm kind of in the same, I would think the same vein of interest in you as you guys, in the sense that I like complicated jazz and math core stuff, like, and I like the like tricky stuff, which it's funny, like I can see now that I'm talking to you, I can see some of those like Opeth and like
Yeah.
the journey in your music, even though it's a different kind of music. I can see what you're talking about,
Yeah.
like how that's definitely like similar, even if it's a different kind of music. Yeah.
Well, there's this interesting, and I promise this relates, there's this interesting painting or drawing of some sort. It's called the Apotheosis of Dualatry. We can get into spirituality a little bit. And it's this really interesting psychedelic sort of poster that I have in my house. And there's two different sides of it. One side is a yes, the other side is a no. One side is the middle finger, the other side's a thumbs up. And there's a yin and the yang. And you can think of like the technicality and the loose creativity, the right and left brain, as the left and the right, the up and the down, the yes and the no, the white and the black. But it's all ensconced within a one thing. And the one thing is, for me, why am I doing this? Why am I choosing this meter? Why am I facilitating this emotion creatively? And for me, it all goes down to, can I help people? Can I be of service to people? Can I heal people in some way? Can this be altruistically motivated?
I can say firsthand that it does. What
Thanks.
you're doing is important, man. I can say for certainty that I would not be here without live music. Going to shows and seeing, especially like local, like indie artists perform, really helped me through dark times. And it's so good that you're aware that that's like a thing that can help people. But like, it odds are it probably helps people more than you even realize.
Yeah. Well, we got to be careful here, because everyone who's an artist who's listening to this or watching this knows that ego can get in the way so quickly. And I'm so guilty of this. I can think, okay, well, I need X amount of followers to be okay, or X amount of sales. I need to have this amount of notoriety, or I can even believe in some spiritual delusions that I'm not okay as I am. And I need to realize this creative endeavor to be okay, or I need some form of external success or some form of achievement to be okay. And that's not something that I can just get over in one day. It's like a reoccurring delusion that happens on a daily basis that I'm guilty of constantly. And so it takes this repeated application of reminding myself of this delicate balance. On one hand, I have goals and I want to realize them, but on the other hand, how can I be internally validated and realize that I'm okay as I am, and I don't need to produce this thing in order to be okay? And what that does is that I'm no longer releasing this art from a place of taking. I'm not trying to get you to do something. I'm not trying to get you to like me. I'm trying to give and have this be an act of service because I'm already full. And that makes the art better.
Oh yeah. It's easy, and I don't think a lot of artists understand this, kind of to what you're saying. But an audience is aware when a band is on stage and they're not having a good time. Like they're just waiting for the set to be over. Yeah. It's very painfully obvious to the crowd, but I don't think a lot of artists are aware how transparent that is. It's like you really are just here to get paid. Like this is just a job to you, versus an artist who has an intention of, I'm here, take my fucking beating heart. Yeah. Have that.
Yeah.
And I can tell that you're a real artist, man.
Thank you. Well, there is a pros and cons to having a day job and not doing this thing full time. I'm actually 3,000 less rich because of this project, and I don't expect to recoup the investment.
It sounds like it.
I'm not doing it.
It sounds like it costed $3,000.
I'm not doing it to make money. I'm doing it because I think this can help people. Yeah, exactly. I imagine it's difficult to navigate this creative space from when you introduce like
Yeah,
this is my full-time job.
I totally understand, man. Like we're in my bedroom with like very cheap equipment and no backdrop, and like I definitely am not opposed to upgrades as long as it does not in even 1% compromise the integrity of what I'm trying to do. And so I see what you're saying. Like yeah, I would feel weird about making money off of this. Like, not that I would reject sponsors. If you want to sponsor Rabbit Hole, I'll plug whatever it is.
Oh hell yeah! Oh yeah, I'll keep that in mind.
But yeah,
Yeah.
napalm,
Yeah.
cigarettes,
Uranium.
Yeah, so that's
cigarettes for children. I'm
Absolutely.
your guy. But
Hey, smoking is cool.
Smoking is cool, and so is violence.
Violence.
we actually
this episode's brought to you by violence.
I'll give you an inside scoop. It's the release of this album. We actually like smoked a bunch of meth before every
Hell yeah.
tracking session.
Whoa.
That's the opposite of what I would have thought listening to it.
No,
It's the opposite of meth music.
it was actually heroin.
Meth.
Yeah, that's like Prozac music. That's
One
like
divided by meth.
But I did want to go back to what you were saying though, because the thing is, I had these struggles too. The reality is that I cut corners artistically for a while because of a fear of not being good enough. And also the sense of, well, I'm doing it for the sake of creating. I don't care about marketing. I don't care about promotion. I just want to help people. But the reality is I can't think of these as divorce things. I heard it said here in Nashville that, it's impossible to do music without conceiving it as a business as well. If I don't market, if I don't promote, then it's not going to work. And I never did that correctly until this time.
It's not going to work?
Because in the sense of no one's going to listen to it. And I think anyone who makes music wants people to listen.
Well, yeah, yes and no, right? Like the goal is to make the thing for yourself. But I understand what you're saying. Like that is a big component to it.
So let's just say you're right. You're right. I just want to say, like, if you're doing it for yourself, then this doesn't matter. But I'll just say, just speaking for myself, the purpose is to help others. And I can't help others if people don't listen to it.
Enough.
And if I don't put it out there, people won't listen to it.
I guess I don't think about that side of things as much as because I'm also in the business of saving the world. And if
Savior complex.
If I take we can definitely get on some Christ complex. We'll talk about that in a minute. But
okay. After the commercial break.
After a message from our sponsor, Violence and Cigarettes for Children. What was it saying? But yeah, no. If I was taking it more seriously, I might think more about like spreading. Like instead, like. Because I get what you're saying. It's about making the art, but you also have to get it to people in order to help them.
Yeah.
That's got to happen too.
Well, what do you think about this? I've been saying a lot.
Well, with my music, non-drone collective music.
Hanna-Barbera cartoon never made.
That's right, yes.
It was never made, so.
Yeah, you lied to us. You made it. You did.
I didn't make it, but it's not the Hanna-Barbera cartoon. If you want to go down that road, we can go over the history of Hanna-Barbera. But I tend to do everything myself, like the mixing, the recording. The only thing I sometimes don't do myself is the mastering. But the reason I do that is so I can give the music away to people without having to face the cost or the sunk cost of making music. Also, I get to teach myself how to mix music and, having that, like, the band Fugazi? You heard of Fugazi?
Yeah.
They used to price their shows at $5. And pricing their shows at $5, it sort of got rid of the burden of having to perform very well. And ironically, they were one of the best performing bands of all time. So that's the reason why I tend to do things myself, so that I don't have to pay for it.
And if you do that, you're going to sell the place out,
and you'll save money.
Component.
Yes.
You're going to save money. More people are going to come. And I only paid $5 for this.
Yeah, so my methodology is a little different because I don't trust my ability to do the audio engineering. I also don't like it. I'm all about composing and creating. Beyond that, tracking, mixing, mastering, it's not my thing. And I'm fortunate to have a day job where I can afford these things. And also, this is extremely complicated music. It really needed to be handled by professionals, I think. So
Yes, this is
It
true.
definitely sounded like it was professionally done. It's
yes,
very good.
Yes.
I couldn't. I mean, I've always wanted to, and I would even say, I think I've always had the ability to do this, but I lacked the resources to do it. I didn't have fellow musicians with whom to realize this sort of thing, and also on a spiritual level, I was an active addiction. I was really spiritually sick, and I think if I would have succeeded at that time, my ego would have gotten in the way, and I probably would have acted out on my addiction. I would have caused a lot of unmanageability in my life. I wouldn't have been able to really handle or navigate the situation with integrity. So I was resentful about it for quite a while, but now looking back, I see I wasn't ready. I didn't do the spiritual work that I needed to actually be able to face the music of what it literally of what it looks like to, have any degree of success. And who's to say if this will have any success and by what metric? But all I know is I'm I think I'm squared away in terms of my own mental work. I'm not treating this thing like a higher power, like I have other things in my life, and I can just view as an act of service, and that's very grounding. So, but also logistically, going back to earlier, I couldn't afford any of the things I was doing before.
Yeah.
You know,
You're a very conscious individual. Is overcoming addiction part of what makes you so aware?
I don't know. I mean,
Have you always been this aware?
I've always been a very introspective person, but I didn't know I was sick until my penultimate therapist told me that. And I've been sober from my primary addiction for over a year and a half, and I've had just such a rich and fulfilling life since then. It's not perfect, but um, I mean, I had a degree of self awareness. I was studying spiritual literature. I was going on hikes. I was really trying to learn about the world. I read a bunch of books and whatnot, but none of that actually helped me stop the behaviors that were killing me. And it wasn't because I was defective or unintelligent or a bad person. It was just because I was sick and I was powerless over this thing that was killing me. So, people, the average person in the world, everyone is sick, right? But people may have varying degrees of sickness, and some people might just have selfishness that comes up in a way that doesn't necessarily kill them. Like, oh, they're maybe super competitive in business and they treat that as a higher power, but that's not going to go kill them. But what I did would actually land me in jail and actually physically, it'll settle for spiritually dead, but it would prefer me physically dead. So I had no choice. And so I immediately did the 12 steps, became sober, and my entire life has changed for the better. And so has my art.
Yeah, first of all, congratulations. That is a huge thing to overcome.
Thank you. Well, clearly I'm not an alcoholic, so yeah.
Are you comfortable talking about what it was?
Well,
if not, that's okay.
I've thought about this because like it's a public forum. I mean,
Alice isn't going to tell anybody.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding, man. I'm not putting you on the spot. If you don't want to talk about that, that's fine.
Well, fuck it. Wear my heart on my sleeve. I'm covering sex porn love addict. So yeah, it's been a year and a half.
Currently engaged in that, so that's a hard thing to overcome for sure.
And it's a very stigmatized. Like, yeah, alcoholics and drug addicts are stigmatized, and well, I want to compare and say one's worse than the other, but the sex addiction thing is really, really stigmatized in this world, and it's something that's not talked about. Even though Patrick Carnes estimates that most people, who is a sex addiction specialist, he says that most people in this world are sexually addicted. You look at the porn industry and you see how massive it was. Thank God I've not looked at porn for almost 2 years now, because that sucked my soul.
It is soul crushing. Like every time I watch porn, I'm like, I know this is bad for me.
Yeah.
Like physically and mentally, right? And spiritually.
Yeah.
Like the trifecta of like you're fucking yourself up.
Yes. So you think about like going back to kind of what I was saying earlier, you think about like people's selfishness, like in life. If they're not addicts, it's not going to kill them. But for me, it does. Like, because ultimately, I mean, I would have ended up in jail due to my acting out behaviors, and a similar thing could be said for alcoholics and drug addicts. But the thing is that it's all the same spiritual malady. So there's a couple things there. One is that my particular addictions are maybe outwardly different from other people, but it's the same spiritual problem of feeling like I'm not good enough, feeling like I need something in the external world to make me okay. And another dimension here is that, yeah, I may have these exaggerated behaviors that will kill me, but any form of selfishness really is coming from that same place of spiritual sickness. So that same selfishness that would cause me to watch porn in my active addiction and go act out is the same exact spiritual sickness that might keep me from holding an elevator door open for someone. So I can't just be sober from these activities. I had to completely change who I was as a person and like really focus on how I could be a better person and turn my character defects over to my higher power so I could be of maximum service to people in my life. And I do that imperfectly, but it's a hell of a lot better than it was before.
Saying that, I want you to know, saying that is a huge thing, man.
Yeah.
Like being able to say, just state what you did is a very brave, and I have a lot of respect for that.
Thanks.
Yeah. That's a big part of what I'm trying to do is like convince people that they can be vulnerable.
Yeah.
Because people like they respect you more when you're vulnerable, like when you're open, like heart on your sleeve. Like I feel like I just met you. I feel like I know you pretty well at this point now. Because we're both pretty genuine people,
I try.
Yeah.
I don't have a choice. I mean, I could choose not to be genuine, but then I'll go end up dying.
Also, there is something to be said about like this isn't the only reason that I try to be authentic and genuine, but a component to that, like on the selfish side, is people are more or less, depending on the person, telepathic. Like women especially are very intuitive to what you're thinking, right? I think we all understand that. Like people, and as I'm getting older, this is becoming more true for me. People see right through you. Like you think you hide things from people, and they might not even consciously pick up on it, but people are transparent and everyone can read each other's minds. So there's really no point in trying to conceal things. It doesn't make sense.
We're like the mycelium, all connected.
We're all connected. Yeah, absolutely. Like even if it's not like literally telepathic, people are able to intuit a lot off of very little, and they don't even do it consciously a lot of the time. It's just like micro mannerisms that you're not even aware that you're picking up on, but you are picking up on that. That's like this person gives me a bad vibe and I can't put my finger on it. That's because subconsciously you understand something that's going on here, even if you can't put words to it, right?
Yes.
So I think that's, as I'm getting older, I value honesty and authenticity more than any other quality in people. It's like the most important thing.
Transparency. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, you can't be spiritually sick or addicted or divided in life and be honest. You can't have a secret and be honest.
Yeah.
And if I go watch porn, or if whatever my drug of choice is, if I go do heroin or whatever it is, I'm going to be hiding, and that means I'm not going to have an integrated self, and it's compartmentalized. And I'm Patrick Carnes, again, addiction specialist. He talks about this concept of bargain with chaos. So I'm making a bargain here. I think I'll feel good and I'll get what my needs met if I can go ahead and do this activity. But the chaos, it starts charging interest. The chaos starts compounding, and I think I can contain the chaos at first. It's like, oh, I just did heroin once. That's fine. I'm not going to do it again. I'm not going to tell my family because it's not a part of my life. I'm not being ruled by it. I'll stop. But then I become powerless over the behavior as the impulse becomes compulsion, and eventually I can't really manage this double life. It's going to come to a head at some point, and the unmanageability is going to start really wrecking me. And we're not supposed to be living in such a divided way.
Dude, fucking high five.
Okay.
I didn't know what. I was like, we're either going to shake hands or we're going to fist bump or high. I'm deciding high five is what we're doing here.
Sure.
I could not agree more with you, man. It's also like we need your heroes. We need virtuous people in the world because it's sick. The world is sick.
Yep.
We're in a sick, divided time, and we all need to like come to all of us as people need to come together and create a singular community, because that is the only thing that's going to save us from the powers that be.
Yes.
The only thing that will save you is listening to this Drone Collective album.
That is the only thing.
I have the one antidote to the sickness.
Yeah.
And it's this Drone
The
Collective.
truth, the way to life.
Come work at Drone Depot, and we'll solve every problem in your life.
Oh, can we get that clearly displayed for the camera? Can we flex your drip?
Oh yeah, I've been trying to like
Drone Depot. We got the album art in the back.
Look at that.
If you want to come buy one, hang out with us.
December 6th.
We may or may not be this vulnerable.
I will probably be there too, and you should definitely get their album, and you'll have physical copies.
Yes, but I did want to go back to what you're saying, right? So the way that one thinks usually, the way I thought is, man, there's a hell of a lot of problems in this world. I got to go fix this stuff. And it sounds so intuitive, but we miss it. Jiddu Krishnamurti, he was a thinker, and he said, how can I possibly go fix the world if I'm divided within myself? If I said the key is internal, I've got to go fix this stuff within myself.
War is right here.
Like I had all these resentments, I had all these fears, I had all these problems, all these sorrows, and all the shame that was unprocessed. And I've always wanted to help people. I was gifted with this, not compulsion, but drive for helping others, which is unique. Not everyone is naturally like that, especially addicts. But my ability to do that was compromised by my sickness, and I couldn't do it until I sorted that stuff out within myself. If my house is not in order, then I can't be of service. Yeah. And luckily, this Drone Collective album was the very first creative endeavor I ever worked on where I put my house in order before working on it. And I think it shows, because everything before that point, higher power works through sick people, but I was still divided within myself. And it was only when I was able to fully integrate myself and live an authentic life was I able to reflect that authenticity in the music, which of course helps it be more moving to others.
It is kind of like a cut diamond. Like that album is like crystalline, just so of itself, uncontaminated. It's really virtuous. People don't think music's as important as it is until they don't have music. And then they're like, oh, damn, this is like, I didn't realize this is food. This is food.
It's nourishment. Yeah.
Like, you need good art in your life. Mm-hmm. If you are not, Alice, if you are not making and consuming art, what are you doing with your life? What else is, there's good food. There's connection. Like
people like some business people, they like spreadsheets.
Well, that
can also be an art.
Well, no, what I do in my day job is not art.
Let's define art here. Like, what is art?
I defer to y'all.
Come on, man. I'm a math major.
Okay. We'll table that one.
We'll table it. Well, I will say, nothing.
Art is
God. It's God. Art is God. God is everything, or God is nothing, as it says in the big book, and therefore art is a part of everything. And so art is I'll speak for myself. Art is my higher power working through me, doing for me and others what I couldn't do through myself, and helping me convey something that is beyond words, that can heal people in this fourth dimension of existence.
Yes.
Well, for me, art.
Yeah, go ahead.
For me, art is short for Arthur.
Yeah.
The aardvark?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good show.
DW.
Yeah.
She's crazy, dude. DW be wildin'.
Dude, I was so happy when Arthur punched her in the face. She needed it.
Yeah.
Sometimes you got to be humble.
Whoa.
This episode is
brought to you by violence.
Speaking of violence, you see that one episode of Arthur where he cut his leg on the fucking can?
No.
And he's like bleeding, and they're like,
it's like like really vivid, gruesome detail.
That's true violence.
Like it turns into Happy Tree Friends all of a sudden.
Yeah. And also hitting your.
He just breaks his leg. It's fully visible. He's just screaming in agony.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. He's cut his leg with a can. Huh?
Yeah. That was.
That's art.
That was a rough one. That is art.
That's art there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that is also art.
I have this thing. I think everyone worships something.
Oh yeah.
Consciously or subconsciously. That's kind of what addiction
You're opening.
is.
We're in the rhetoric rabbit hole, right? So have you read Brave New World by Aldous Huxley?
I have read Doorways to Perception.
You got to read.
Well, I think I told you earlier, we do a book club once a month.
So
I would love to have you on if you want to talk about.
There's this book called Brave New World by Aldous Huxley, and I think it is a book that everyone should read.
I'm definitely familiar with it.
Yes, and then he wrote this nonfiction book called The Perennial Philosophy. If anyone wants to read a bunch of words by me, I publish an essay on it. But the point is, Brave New World is this story of this dystopian universe. It was very prescient at the time. It was written in like the early 30s, 1932, I believe. And the idea is that the dystopia was actually something that we all secretly want. It like everybody's having orgies, everyone's taking amazing drugs, and they're having amazing sex, and they're feeling awesome. They get to watch as much media as they want. They watch just all these super engaging forms of entertainment. All they do is just go play golf, they socialize, they hang out. Everything is just dopamine all the time. And that's very challenging to us because we typically associate dystopia with a sort of 1984 perspective, which I've also read, but I find that to be a little bit less compelling because I think that we're amusing ourselves to death is really the more accurate idea of our modern world. But the thing is, we're worshiping things that are not God. We are hoping that if I get a girlfriend, then I'll be okay. And so I worship the girlfriend, especially as a recovering addict. Or if I only get this job, I'll be okay. Or if only I release this album, I'll be okay. Or if only this person is nice to me, then I'll be okay. If only I get this raise, I'll be okay. And I may sound like a sage right now, but this is just what it means to be human, is that these delusions,
you will worship something.
These dishonesties will reassert themselves on a daily basis. And so it requires a power outside of myself, for me personally, a higher power to help me cut through all of that so I can worship the one thing that really will help me.
Consciously worship something, because if you don't, you will subconsciously be a slave to something.
We all worship, we all have faith, whether we want to, whether we admit it or not.
So I totally agree with you. If you were to put words to it, what do you worship?
For me, I mean, like I could be my goal is to worship my higher power, and only that.
I like that answer. There's a difference between that and reality.
But
well said.
Man. In reality,
worship's an effort too. I think it doesn't have to be that you're perfect at it. It's like a pursuit.
In reality, it's like I fall into the same traps as everyone else. I can be like I can believe the lie that I just need this music thing to go my way to be okay. If only if I have a partner, I'll be okay. Like those are the day-to-day things I worship, or maybe even just putting on some sort of YouTube video to make myself feel better. That's a subtle form of worship.
Oh yeah. I like that too. It's not as simple as like, oh, I say I worship this. That's kind of like name only Christians. Like I go to church on Sunday, but I'm also a giant piece of shit all the time. It's like, well, you don't really fuck with Jesus then. Like you're not really doing that. You ain't living that life. And it's like, I think it does have to be healthy, but it's definitely better to worship music or like fitness or something like that than heroin.
Yeah, but I can't, like I said earlier, if I start worshiping music, then I'm going to start getting a taking mentality, and I'm going to start being
so it has to be the thing. It has to be God. Basically,
God is not mocked, that's
like the one thing. That's
golden calves are everywhere, and we know what happened to those guys back in the day when they bowed down to those golden calves.
Were you raised religiously?
I was raised ethnically Jewish. I don't want to like religion drop you.
About it a little bit
we did.
Yeah, so that Judeo-Christian life. So
the Old Testament is. I was raised Jehovah's Witness.
They knocked on my door.
Yeah,
I invited them over to a meal. Actually,
that's very nice.
Yeah,
they're really nice people.
But then they just tried to convert me nonstop.
That's all they're there for.
This might be the most religiously diverse episode of the podcast because I was raised in Islam.
Yeah.
So
we got all three Abrahamic death cults at the table.
Yes.
Let's fucking go.
Yeah. And I used to be very cynical. I read the entire Bible in my early 20s, and I could be a huge intellectual about it. I studied the archaeology. I looked at the text and stuff, and I arrived at my own conclusions. But the reality is that it just made me really resentful and just gave me an excuse to just dismiss the whole thing altogether. And there's a line in the big book that says something like that. where I dismiss the beauty of the forest for the ugliness of some of its trees. And the reality is, I needed a power that worked for me, even if I may not necessarily subscribe to any particular religion.
Well, particularly about Judaism, because that's Old Testament is something I'm specifically versed on. I know the Greek gospel, like all that stuff, but specifically, I know a lot about the Torah and the Hebrew scriptures.
I think it's problematic for sure.
Yeah. Well, yeah. There's okay.
We could get into it.
We gotta tread lightly here.
Yeah, I don't know if it's worth it though, because the reality is,
I am gonna say this.
Okay, go ahead.
I can speak about a religion and malpractice in a religion without speaking on ethnicity, right? But people associate these two things because it's an ethno-religion, which makes it sound racist. But we should be able to critique Israelites, like Israelite culture and that tribalism, without making it a conversation about skin tone.
Yes, and I used to be able to do such a thing, but then I started realizing that criticism and cynicism was blocking me from the sunlight of the spirit. It was blocking me from a conception of a higher power and a richness of spiritual life that worked for me. So, I mean, I would really, really go in there and debate, and it wasn't working.
I want to say too, I have a lot of respect for text, but power. That's because that's what it is. It's power.
Yeah.
Power can be used to do something good, and it can be used to do something bad. So what you choose to do with that thing is up to you. But that being said, I have a lot of respect and admiration for the text itself. I think it's a very important thing, for sure.
Special delivery.
What we got here?
This is yours. That's your name.
Like,
What is that?
yeah, I just said it somewhere. Thank you.
Yeah. It's been there for a while. I just want to let you know that it's there.
Thanks.
Oh yeah.
Appreciate it.
No.
And back. Where are we at?
What is time, Alice?
Oh, yeah.
You know that time's an illusion, anyways.
Yeah, I was going on a problematic rant about Judaism.
Yes.
But
well, here's my thought. I've been to the Baha'i church a few times here in Nashville, and they have this very compelling notion called divine progressive revelation. I mean, and the idea is, over time, if you believe the idea that humans sociologically have evolved over time, some people don't believe that, but I think it's pretty obvious. If you compare us to the Bronze Age people, I think there's a clear sign of advancement. But regardless, their idea is that back then they were at a more immature or less advanced sociological state, so they were less able to grasp onto spiritual concepts. And so the idea is that God sure. like relayed things onto them in a way they could understand at that sure. moment, and then over time he reveals more. Like I don't personally believe that God actually believes what Paul said, that like women should be silent in the church, but that's how their God conveyed things to them at that time. But then it evolves. But I respect people who believe differently, but I think it's all part of a continuum.
It's one of those things, like regardless of what it is, whether it's Christianity, Judaism, or Islam, there's so many beautiful things in there, but we have to be secular. We have to adapt to what we understand to be good now. Like you can't do it in its entirety. Otherwise you're like a war, like, because if we're talking about Judaism specifically, like it's a tribal, it's a nation God. It's a tribal God. So
screw those Amalekites.
Yeah. Yeah.
God hates those.
Yo, those Canaanites, don't dash the baby's head against the stone. We're not keeping nothing.
You do not want to be a Philistine.
No,
God hates.
No.
Hates those people.
It is one of those things though where it's like, well, I guess they did have the true God because they fucking won. I would say evidently.
Wow.
Yeah,
if it happened, but we don't need to even get there.
The stories. Yeah. No, I'll agree with you. It didn't literally happen, but Or maybe it did. What do I fucking know?
We could get into that,
but why did okay? So you grew up. Are you still Jewish?
no. I was very and I bet you had a similar experience. Even though we haven't talked about it in detail, I was disenfranchised with the idea of being forced to pray towards a God that I didn't understand, and no one explained it to me, and no one helped me understand my own relationship. It was just something that was kind of imposed onto me without my consent. I really, really disagreed with that, and I was a smart person. I was considered gifted growing up, and I was very obstinate, and that caused various problems growing up. I remember I had to have a bar mitzvah when I was 13, and they were worried I would go up on the bima, which is the stand, and they were afraid I would go up there and say there's no God. So, but the thing is, my reaction though wasn't any better. I was judgmental towards their intolerance when I was intolerant myself. I was being cynical. I was being judgmental and arrogant and condescending, which are my character defects, and that wasn't very constructive or helpful at all. And then in my early 20s, I began to experiment with like psychedelics and meditation and stuff like that, and I started to see some compelling ideas across all major world religions. Yeah. But I didn't actually have a real relationship with a higher power of any sort. And that left me in the state of anxiety and fear and restlessness and irritability and discontent. And it wasn't until I entered recovery that I actually learned what it meant to actually have a real relationship.
I've heard that about 12 steps, is that it leads you to a spirituality that is different from anything you can find in religion, but still hits all those key points.
You can, I mean, it's not in opposition to any major world religion.
Yeah, but you can also be like an atheist.
Yes.
And do it. Yeah.
Yeah, but you can be a very religious person and go to church every day. There was a story in the beginning of the big book where someone went to Carl Jung and he's like, man, I go to church every single week. And Carl Jung says that's not going to cut it. Are you having this internal psychic change, like this transformation within yourself, where you actually have a personal relationship with this power greater than yourself through prayer and meditation? Like, and conversely, I can have that. Like, that's what I have right now is the latter, but that doesn't mean I necessarily have to subscribe to a particular worldview. So
sure,
it's not that the spirituality and religion are divorced entirely. They can overlap, but they don't have to.
I think fundamentalism gets in the way of this because once you understand what the message is and what's trying to be conveyed, you do see the patterns across all religions where these like groups of people that are completely separate and isolated from each other all kind of hit the same key points somehow, which looks to me like I don't really know what to do with that except some kind of like inspiration.
Yeah, so Carl Jung actually talked about that. He referred to it as the collective unconscious. And this guy, Joseph Campbell, he wrote this book called, he talked about this idea of the hero's journey in his book, Man with 1,000 Faces or something. And in that book, he's talking about how all these major myths across all these major world religions and cultures that did not talk to each other, that had these same fundamental ideas. And the idea is that it points to something deeper. There's some sort of inherent truth that's underlying all of this. It just happens to manifest outwardly in slightly different ways.
Yeah. There's a reason like that to me has to be the explanation, is there's something that we tap into. And then like we tap into it in different places and at different times, but we're all kind of touching on the same thing that's there. Yeah. I believe in higher power too. I take like a, like, I think that those ancient rabbis like had it pretty fucking close. Because they don't really like, I mean, okay, so I have a big problem with organized religion because of dogma and doctrine.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be really careful not to be dogmatic.
Yeah.
Because I am the kind of person that like, I am well versed in this. So I think I have it figured out, but I'm not going to try, I have to not be arrogant about it because that's the thing I don't like about religion. But I feel pretty confident because of my understanding of the Torah that these are pretty intelligent and logic driven people where like the myth is there to carry the message, But among a lot of the intellectuals in that, they're not taking it literally. It's kind of like you teach these stories to children so they get the gist of like respect your elders, or 40 bears are going to come out of the, or 2 bears are going to come out of the woods and kill 40 children. It's like you tell that to kids, they're going to be like, okay, well, I guess I won't make fun of the prophet Elijah then.
I remember that story.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was another similar story. What called him bald. Called him bald.
Yeah, go up, you bald head.
Yeah,
That's one
I remember
the
that
translation I read. That's what it was.
Yeah, so I've always agreed with that idea of the dogma. Like the Buddha talked about, you could point to the moon, but don't mistake my finger for the moon. And we do that all the time. I do it all the time.
Yeah. What I was getting at is that I don't think ancient Judaism has a personal God. It's like Yahweh is an inhale and an exhale, and it's the building blocks. It's a characterized explanation for how things are, and it's not anything more or less than the universe itself. It's like there's creation, which is a separation, but now this kind of is just the way I think of it. I conceptualize it more like Shiva doing the dance, which is the dance that Shiva's doing is everything. But Shiva's not really creating anything. It's just an action that Shiva does. So it's like that's how I see the universe is. I don't really make a cutting separation between creator and creation. It's more like what's happening is a thing that happens. Like to bring it back around, you were talking about the yin and the yang, and like how from a distance these are two different things, but the truth is these are two components to one thing that exists. And I think that's where we're at. This is one iteration of a thing that happens, but there could be like infinite other things that happen, and they don't even have to have the same rules as this, like individual and collective.
It's all one drone collective.
It's all one drone collective. Thank you.
You are Drone Collective. You are Drone Collective listening to Drone Collective.
You're Drone Collective. You're Drone Collective. Look under your seat. There's Drone Collective. Ah! Oh! Wherever you're listening to this from, look under your seat.
There's going to be a collective in there that drones.
Did you look?
God is a droner, by the way. If you just go listen to the world, he likes drone stuff.
God's a stoner. Thank you, Rumi.
Smoking is cool.
Yeah, kids, smoke cigarettes.
Yes.
And
I tell mommy.
Use your mom's credit card to buy cigarettes and do violence.
Use your mom's Apple Pay.
Yeah. And also to buy the Drone Collective album.
Yes. You know, the funny thing about Drone Collective is it's neither drone nor collective.
I mean, there are drone components, and there are collective components, but...
Fuck, dude. You lied to me. Fuck.
But put together, we are searching for more people to join the collective, so it moves beyond the duo. So...
Do you need more than two to be a collective?
I would join your cult if I had musical ability. And I hope that more people join I'm calling you a drone coven now. That's what
if you want to be a drone head,
drone commune.
Yeah. Fill out your application to work at the drone depot.
You can look as silly as us at any given time.
We don't check for citizenship at all. Apply.
We don't do background checks either.
No background checks.
You will get approved because there's not an approval process.
Absolutely.
So this is something I ask everybody. Have you experienced something that defies logic? And one of the cop-out answers is life. Like my life as a whole is one of those nonsensical, illogical things that happens.
Yeah.
But how do I say this? Something, I mean, just
I got it.
A ghost story.
I got it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, my answer is going to be more concrete. In my early recovery, I was asked to come up with things that higher power did for me that I couldn't do for myself. And there are some clear-cut examples. There were like the fact that my higher power told me that I was sick, and there wasn't really any external form of unmanageability that led to that. that defies logic.
Told you how.
Basically, I had just acted out, and higher power said, "This is you are an addict. You are sick. You got to go get help."
When you say it said it, like, did you hear a
Like,
voice?
yeah, it was like an intuitive.
Okay.
Maybe it wasn't like someone actually just coming down from the heavens and just, but still, there was some sort of communication there, some sort of divine intuition. And another example would be the fact that I was doing so much service and volunteering as someone who was in active addiction for all those years. Like that's a very, I don't want to prop myself up, but that's a very unusual thing for people who are like sick. Usually people are like very much in the taking mentality, and service is like a learned thing, but I was still determined to help others, even though I had this thing. And that was higher power working through me and doing for me what I can do for myself. And
Sure.
that defies logic, because logic would say I would just immediately go towards the quick fix. But the
Yeah.
fact that I didn't even know about the solution, I was still practicing it, is a miracle.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean about like it's not quite a voice, but like thoughts, having thoughts that are not your own.
Yeah, and I can
Like
think,
being
yeah,
out there.
and everyone's
Yeah.
different, but for me, like I can feel a difference. Like the thoughts are usually lower energy. They're up
Yeah.
here. They're judgmental. They're ridden with defect. They're fear driven. But something that's more faith driven hits harder, hits quicker. Sometimes more in my chest area. But
That's what these kind of things are for. Like the board and the crystal is more. It's a focal point. Like it's literally it distracts you and allows the ego to get out of the way so you can receive. And they're just tools for tapping into that kind of energy, because like God or the universe, however you want to conceptualize it, is speaking all the time in things that happen, or in inner monologue, or like if you're paying attention, you'll see like signs in the physical world too. The problem is we don't pay attention, we don't listen to it. So if you can quiet the mind with like meditation or something, then it's easier to receive messages, especially if you ask. Like if you like, I don't, I go back and forth about what it is I pray to, but prayer as a practice, I think that's an important one.
got to do it.
If you want something, yeah.
Well, Jesus says, like, asking you shall receive, and talk about logic here. Like, you know this. The contrapositive is if you don't ask, you're not gonna. Or no, that's not the contrapositive. You won't receive if you don't ask. That's the contrapositive, and that's logically equivalent.
Closed mouths don't get fed. Yeah.
Exactly. So I can't really expect to have too much given to me if I don't ask.
So I want to ask you about objective truth.
Yeah.
Objectivity. Specifically as a math guy, and more specifically because you know about statistics, which my understanding of statistics is it's a tool, but it's kind of, no, it doesn't necessarily give you an answer. It's more about like, what are you got to be precise about the question you're asking, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I answer this in a couple of ways. I could answer this in a logical way, and I could answer this in a spiritual way. And I used to be that person that would go on long hikes and debate about objective truth, and I wasn't so sure about it. And the reality is, I don't think I can really apply logic to arrive at it. I'll start with the more scientific explanation. You probably know this. Geometry, right? So you've got a set of axioms that you can just take for granted, but you can't exactly prove. For example, there's like one way to connect two dots with a line. Like the shortest distance is the line.
About the Euclidean.
Yes, but then there's a fifth postulate, and the fifth postulate, long story short, is I forget exactly the language behind it, and no one cares. But the point is that ultimately that fifth postulate leads to ideas like the sum of the angles in a triangle is 180 degrees, and a bunch of really useful things in Euclidean geometry are based off of accepting that fifth postulate. But it was just a postulate. It's just an axiom. Even in mathematics, you have to go down to something that you accept on faith. And to prove that point further, there's actually a whole separate form of geometry called hyperbolic geometry, right, where if you reject the fifth postulate, and say I'm not going to say that's true, then an entirely different universe
Whoa.
spins out of it, and that universe is entirely internally consistent and obeys
That's
a
wild.
bunch of laws.
Okay.
And it's actually been demonstrated that some things in the universe obey that geometry. So the point is that I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to be able to. Camus talks about this idea of lucid reason understanding its limits. You run across a corner, a wall of some sort, and I can't like fully understand things for 100% sure. Something that my friend convinced me a while back on is like if I walk in front of me, like we're even sitting here, like how do I know that this ground is not going to fall through beyond me? And I could say, well, there's laws of gravity and laws of engineering that tell me that, okay, well, something at rest stays at rest. But how do I know that? Like, and then you could say scientists and papers and stuff, but how do I know they're right? I have to have faith.
Objectivity.
I have to have faith. Back to faith. So my answer is yes, I've come to believe in objective truth, but it's a faith thing. I can't tell you that through logic.
Then it's not objective. That's subjective then, right?
So be it. I mean, you can say
it's not objective. So I'm just gonna throw some at you real quick. So like I understand when we get into complex math, especially like geometry and like imaginary numbers and stuff, like it gets more complicated. 1 + 1 = 2 is an objective truth, true or false?
I don't know. I can't answer that with 100% like certainty. Like, I mean, logically, I can say I can accept that. There was actually, I don't know if you know this, but there was Bertrand Russell and another person in the early 1900s. They tried to prove that 1 + 1 = 2 through rigorous mathematics.
Really?
They actually took, I've looked at it cursory, but it's impossible to understand. It's like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages, super complicated. They're trying to basically build an internally consistent mathematics from the ground up to try to prove that there is something objective. Like we can create some sort of mathematics that's consistent across all these different worlds, and they failed. They couldn't do it. And then there ended up being this guy Gödel who basically proved, to the extent you can prove that you can't really create an internally consistent mathematics. But I could get all heady and use all these impressive vocabulary terms.
Attach it to anything physical and just say conceptually. I think this can be done without observation. Like hypothetically, there could be two objects in a vacuum, and whether people observe them or not, these imaginary objects, if there's multiple, then there's multiple. Is that fair?
I don't know, but what I was going to say is that I could debate about this and use my brain and use big words all I want. But practically speaking, if I don't believe 1 + 1 = 2, then I'm not really going to exist in this world very well.
Is there anything you do accept as objective truth?
I mean, yeah, like for me, like, and again, I can't prove it, and I wouldn't lay down my life on it. But from a practical perspective,
I see what you're saying.
I believe that 1 + 1 = 2. Practically speaking, I believe that there's a higher power for me.
Can't prove it. I understand.
Yeah, and I believe that like spiritual principles are the answer to my problems, and it's like I can't like prove it, but I know I'm going to die without it, so I might as well believe it.
What you're helping me understand right now is that the things I've taken for granted are actually faith-based. Like the things I think are objective, I have faith that they're objective. I understand what you're saying.
Yes.
Okay.
You can also create number systems where that addition does break down, like with modular arithmetic.
Even if something as simple as 1 + 1 = 2?
Yes. But you'd have to create that system.
Okay. Oh, okay. I guess I just don't understand that.
No, I don't either.
That's kind of the point. Huh?
I don't think anyone does, to be honest.
Fair enough.
We can't solve the universe. I tried to solve the universe. I read half of Aristotle's Metaphysics around 4 years ago, and my brain broke, and I was still acting out. So, like, I can't. It's
one form of modular arithmetic is the clock.
Okay.
There's no 25th hour. It resets to the first hour.
So 24 + 1 is not 25 in that world is the idea.
Yes. So that's an example of modular arithmetic.
It's a good one.
But that's a mathematical point. More
I guess, and I guess I just don't understand, but I would say it still is, just not in that framework. But I guess I'm operating from a different framework. That's not necessarily
like
objective.
time,
Okay.
maybe.
Okay. All right. Man, that is way more complicated than I thought it was. Can you give me an example of an objective truth?
God is good. But other people may disagree, and that's fine.
Okay.
But
so
that's my objective truth that works for me.
You're making me question my objective truths here, but
I can't give you reason to explain any of this. So we're gonna run in circles. We're not gonna solve it.
Let me try.
So okay, go ahead.
Things I consider objective truth, which I've got to think about this one more now, but 1 + 1 = 2 is usually an example I would give. I got to table that for now. Physics. There is a way in which the physical universe operates, even if people never understand what that is.
Yeah, but Newtonian physics contradicts Einstein's physics.
But it works. There is a way that it works, right? That is consistent.
What do you think?
Well, objectivity is relative to the system you build. So
okay. Even if you can't do this with logic, hypothetically, it does work a certain way.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
So there's objectivity to physics.
I would say so, yes.
Even if people never figure out what that is, it does operate a certain way.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I have faith that that's true as well.
The same is true for 1 + 1 = 2. That's an objective.
Okay, cool. I believe this is true about morality as well, and this is much more of a faith-based thing.
I agree.
You believe in objective morality?
Yes, I do, but I also won't judge anyone who doesn't believe. I didn't believe in it, but I do think like principles come from a higher power. I can't prove it though.
And that brings the soul into question, whether or not there's a soul. But I know, or at least I have a vague, hazy understanding of right and wrong. And I think people are born with that, except for certain exceptions, like really the odd one out. Like psychopaths don't have this, aren't programmed with that. But I do think that that's something that's not invented but discovered. We tapped into morality. We didn't invent it. And that one is definitely faith-based. I can't prove that. But you follow that line of reasoning far enough, it does get to a God conversation, right? Like God is good. It's like the thing that you conceptualize as good, you can call that thing God. If you follow that far enough.
Yeah.
And the other thing about that is it's not 1 and 0. It's not like good and evil. It's a scale, right? So it's like this thing is better than this thing, but that doesn't make it good and bad. It's like there's all this gray area in between.
Spectrum.
But there is still, I think, hypothetically, we could chart this.
We got so much room in the drone depot, we can chart it all.
Yeah. Go on down to Drone Depot to get your objective morality.
That's right. We have drone and shovels.
And philosophy and math and
Yeah,
music.
and
By the way, when we say drone, we mean drones and not drones. Catch me. We mean drones, but not the. No. Oh my God! Take cover. Not like that drone, but drone as in. That's the drone we're talking about.
Which we occasionally do.
So, I'll ask you one more question, and then I'll let you guys go. No one knows the answer. Some people feel pretty confident that they do know the answer, but we're all confused children running around just like freaking out, like what the fuck's going on. Anyway, do you have any preconceptions about what happens after you die at this point in your life?
No.
Oh, he's already.
Go ahead, man. I answered this.
I have no answer.
Okay, that's
but
fair.
I'm starting to think like I feel like more will be revealed. I feel like it's not enough has been revealed in one life. I think it's plausible that there could be more. And you look at near death stories, and they've experienced stuff when they were said they were brain dead. So.
I believe in that too. I subscribe to reincarnation, and I also think it's one thing experiencing itself through a myriad of
But
lenses.
the reincarnation thing, though, I don't know though, because if I don't remember that previous life, then to what extent am I that thing?
Sure.
Or, like I feel like
that's a soul conversation.
Yeah.
Whether there's a single the experiential aspect. Does that thing, even without memory, carry across iterations? I guess. I lied. One more question.
Okay, yeah. I mean, we can stick around. Having fun.
What's your projection for humanity in the next, let's say, 50 years? What do you think?
Okay, your turn.
Oh yeah, it doesn't look good.
Come on.
And it does not look good. Especially, I would say here in the States, it does not look good.
Why?
I think it hasn't for a long time, but yes.
Very long time, yes. I've told people this before. I think the world ended already.
What do you mean?
Well, the world as we knew it, I would say the world ended, and I won't give the year because I don't want to be cheesy, but I think the world ended as we know it already.
How?
Some people say 1914 when Franz Ferdinand was shot.
I would say quite a bit after that it ended.
Okay, so what happened that makes you feel that way?
Well, I'm I'm just speaking locally here. I'm not speaking
as we know it.
Yeah, like
tell me the juicy details.
I can't tell you the juicy details.
And you lied though because you said everything is fine.
Tea, girl.
Okay, I think the world ended in. I would rather say off air, but.
Oh, okay.
But can you at least explain why you think the world ended? What forces came into play?
It changed the trajectory. Okay, it was going like this before, maybe this, maybe all this, and then it just went like
this. But how? You can't just say that and not explain.
An event happened.
What event? 9/11?
Not 9/11. Maybe 9/12.
9/12. They forget about 9/12.
What happened 9/12?
Oh, you don't know.
Yes, maybe not even 9/10.
Dude. You know about 9/12, dude?
Yes.
Okay.
Maybe even.
Climate change is a problem. My answer is climate change will be a problem, but I have to try to be optimistic and hopeful because if I don't, I will lose my brain. And we look at like birth rates, we look at mortality rates, we look at quality of living across the world. It is I think to what extent we can call it objectively, I think it's just like significantly better. And again, I could go into all this like, objective.
Things are better than they've ever been.
Yeah, I mean, like literally 100 years ago, like people were dying.
We have a lot of big problems that are new to this world that we inhabit. That being said, quality of life is better than it's ever been. And
that's huge.
We don't need to take that for granted.
That's true. We don't need to take that for granted, but certain people are in charge of pressing the button.
And that's always been the case. Going back to power.
Also the danger.
There's a danger of pressing who gets to, there's certain people who can press the button.
I will say I have the same fear you do. We have been in this situation for about like 60, 70 years.
We've been in a holding pattern.
What do you mean? It's been longer than that. It's been all of human history, I think.
Well, the ease of which you could blow up all of humanity like in a couple hours.
That's fair. That's fair.
That is recent in the terms of humans, but contextually to us, that's been going on a while.
Mutually assured destruction.
And we haven't done that yet because of mutually assured destruction is the only reason humans exist right now. No, I have the same fear you do. It's. I would like to hear your prediction for your forecast for the where is humanity in 50
I have no idea.
years?
I mean, I think climate change is really going to be a serious issue.
So when you say climate change,
that's actually the reason why I'm not having kids. But keep going.
Earth goes like you seem like you know history fairly well. Earth goes through change, like goes through cycles.
Yes.
tide comes in, tide comes out.
So I'm not
Tide goes
saying
in, tide goes out.
I'm not saying that people should not be more responsible with our ozone layer, but also change is coming regardless of what we do. And humanity seems to pull through those ice ages, and so
Yeah, but
There's-
it's going to cause billions and billions and billions of dollars
Sure.
of problems
There's like
and lives.
and lives.
Yeah.
there's areas in the world, or just zooming out from the States, but there's areas in the world where the earth is literally falling to the ocean.
Yeah.
You know, that's not going to stop.
That's not going to stop no matter what we do.
Yeah.
That's going to happen.
But honestly, I'm okay with it because, Florida, who needs it?
Man, agree with that.
Florida
is a third world country.
There is a great song by this ambient project, Swing Victory for the Soul, and their song name is called Adios, Florida.
Yeah.
That's like Tool having that song about California falling into the ocean. And that's actually a good time. I'll let Neef in. Check out Drum Collective at Adam's house. DM for address.
There will be drones.
The album is streaming today. I'll put a link to it in the bio. Thank you again for coming, gentlemen. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Good to see you again, Rumian.
Yes.
Nice to meet you, Adam.
Thank you.
And we'll see you next week.